Welcome to the Board of Education special meeting for Thursday, August 5th, 2021 for the Ventura Unified School District. We need to well, it's not on here, but we're going to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. So if I have screen sharing, I will provide a flag. And everyone stand, please. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We need to adopt the agenda. Are there any changes, Dr. Rice?
There was some discussion earlier between us about the potential for amending the resolution. I suggest that we wait till that item comes up. We have had some conversations with our legal counsel, so we can get into any suggested amendments to the resolution at that time. So no changes.
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Vote as follows. Trustee Dannenberg.
Yes.
Trustee Callahan.
Yes.
Trustee Rodriguez.
Yes.
Trustee Almaraz.
Yes.
And Trustee Lomax.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0.
Do we have any public comments on closed session items?
We do not.
Thank you very much. Then we need a motion to go into closed session where we will be discussing conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code 549569D2. And conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. I will entertain a motion.
So moved. Oh, second?
Thank you. Vote as follows. Trustee Dannenberg.
Yes.
Trustee Callahan.
Yes.
Trustee Rodriguez.
Yes.
Trustee Almaraz.
Yes.
And Trustee Lomax.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0.
So Ms. Kuros, do you want to explain the process for us to go into closed session?
Sure. For those who have been invited into closed session, you do have a link from Dr. Rice. Please use that link to go into closed session. Mr. Stewart, I hope I'm saying that right, you will be allowed in at the time when they are going to be discussing your particular topic. So you might be sitting in the waiting room for just a little while, but the rest of the board, please feel free to go in. Dr. Rice and Dr. Chandler both have the admin right. Anyone who's currently watching our meeting, we are going to go into closed session, so you all can stay here, and when they come back into regular session, this is where they'll be. It could take up to an hour, just letting you know that, but as soon as they're back, we will begin to record again. Any other questions, President Lomax?
No, that's, you do a great job as always.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you. Well, now I see where the pledge was, but we already did that, so we're going to dispense with that. I apologize. Ms. Dawn, will you do the roll call?
Sure, I'd be happy to. President Velma Lomax.
Here.
Vice President Matt Almaraz.
Here.
Trustee Sabrina Rodriguez.
Here.
Trustee Amy Callahan.
Here.
Trustee Dr. Jerry Dannenberg.
Here.
And Superintendent Dr. Roger Rice.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, let me see. The board has just returned from closed session, and there is no action that was taken in closed session. Ms. Kuros, do we have any public comments?
I do not believe so. Ms. Dom.
No, there's no live public comments today.
Thank you. Which means for the public that if you did send an email, it was transmitted to the board members prior to this meeting and will be made a permanent part of our record. So we're going to go on to the conference business services, item number 12A. Consideration for approval of resolution 2120, reconfirming acceptance of the advisory committee recommendation regarding district real property, declaring property surplus, declaring intention to offer property for sale, authorizing the solicitation of sale through a bid process, and action is requested. And this is Dr. Chandler.
Before Rebecca jumps in, I just wanted to share for the public and for the board that although the lead-in talks about declaring the property surplus and intent to sell the property, staff is very clear that the one doesn't necessitate the other, right? So if the board were to declare a property surplus, it doesn't mean right now you're going to go out and sell it tomorrow. I know there were some questions about the resolution and the language in the resolution that clearly states those things very directly. And I've shared those concerns with Ms. Chandler and also with Mr. Saldani, who can address the resolution, why it's worded the way it is, and the options that you have once you have declared the property surplus, and the extent to which any language in the resolution could potentially be binding, as well as options for setting this particular resolution aside or bringing it back with amended language and any other options that we may have. So I just wanted to address that right off the bat. Set your mind at ease that the intent of the resolution was not to try to bind you to any particular course of action. So Ms. Chandler.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Race. So just to remind the board, we had gone through the process of a 7-Eleven committee. And in that committee, we had, I believe, 9, 6, 7, 10 properties that went through that committee. That was back in when we just did the final report not very long ago, October 21st of 2020. The 7-Eleven committee reported to the board their recommendations. What we were wanting to do was to move forward with just 2 of those properties today during this present board meeting. That is the ESC and the Avenue School, to ask the board to declare them surplus. And as Dr. Rice stated, if there's anything in the recommendation that you have in front of you that you're uncomfortable with, such as selling the properties immediately, we can strike that and amend this. But I wanted to have Mr. Saldani here today because I wanted you guys to understand the legal ramifications, what happens once we declare a property surplus, then what, and how does that process look? So Mr. Saldani, do you want to just give a brief overview of what that looks like?
Yes, thank you, Rebecca. Good afternoon. The resolution that you have in front of you is an important step in the process. There's a lot that happens between now and a time in which you ultimately dispose of the property, if that's the direction you want to go. But declaring something surplus is that first step. You can't really lease the property, you can't sell it, you can't negotiate with buyers to buy it, you can't really do anything substantively with that property unless and until it has been declared surplus. So right now, this resolution that's in front of you today makes that declaration with respect to these 2 properties. It also gives authorization to go forward with a sale, but that's all it is authorization. It's not a mandatory or directive type of a resolution. In other words, by adopting this, it does not then require you or bind you to dispose of it in any given manner. It gives you the leeway, if you were so inclined, to go through a sale process, and that could look a number of different ways. We can do just a public bid sale. We can work through the State Board of Education to get a waiver of that requirement, and do like an RFP process where we solicit development and purchase proposals from the development community. All of those options are available to us. and they become available by virtue of this board declaring these properties surplus. So again, your adoption of the resolution enables you to pursue these different avenues. But it's important to note that it doesn't require you to. Just because you declare this surplus and because you authorize the disposition of the property, it doesn't bind you. It doesn't start like a ticking clock that you have to get rid of the property and sell it by a certain date. It just opens up the options for the district to explore with respect to disposition, which could be a number of things. It could be a lease, it could be a sale, it could be a number of different things. And this is kind of that first step in that process, is to adopt the recommendations made by the 7-Eleven committee and declare formally these properties surplus. What in terms of practical next steps, once we have these
Can I
declared,
interrupt you just for a moment, Mr. Soldani? I apologize.
Yes.
But
no worries.
I just want to get one thing straight. I thought that we had discussed, we are going to be discussing other properties on our agenda today that we really shouldn't be discussing until we absolutely declare them surplus. So why are we now only talking about 2 pieces of property? I thought that we as a board had said, let's take the recommendation of the 7-Eleven committee so that we can discuss the next items on our agenda, because you just stated as an attorney that we couldn't enter into a lease or do anything until we declared them surplus. So I'm just curious why we are now only talking about 2 properties.
Before Mr. Saldani jumps in, if we went back a few months to a discussion about the board's priorities relative to staff time and all the things that we were dealing with, we laid out for the board, if you recall, the whole laundry list of properties. And at that time, we were asked as a staff to focus only on the Avenue School, the ESC, and the Washington School. The Washington School is on the agenda tonight. We're not asking you to consider declaring surplus because it's already been declared surplus and it's already under lease. So we're dealing with the Washington School from that perspective. The 2 that we're asking you to consider now are the ESC and the Avenue School, which leaves the Sudden Estate and the Jewett Estate as the other 2 properties that we could potentially consider. It also leaves the Fraser Estate, which was not a part of that discussion because of the manner in which that particular property was required. Staff was directed to use a different process for that property. So that's just sitting on the shelf for now.
I'm still a little bit confused. I thought we needed to make sure that all the properties that we either have leases presently or are going to re-enter into leases were surplus. I just am wanting to make sure that we cover everything so that we don't get into a legal bind later. I mean, any board member can speak up, but that's what I was I realized we did say, yes, let's concentrate on these 2 properties, but now we've realized that we can't enter into a lease or do anything until we declare them surplus. And if we're not absolutely positively sure, what does it hurt us to redeclare them surplus today? Yeah, Ms. Rodriguez or Trustee Rodriguez has a question.
Well, I don't want to go out of order. I don't know if,
Okay, let's start with Jerry.
I don't have any questions at this time.
Amy, sorry, Trustee Callahan, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you, President Lomax. I appreciate you sharing that. And so I guess I'm just I appreciate you sharing that. And what you had shared, I agree with, and especially in use of our agenda time and making sure that we're just, and so if there's any action that we need to take or whatever next steps that you advise us, I'm definitely in favor to everything you had just shared.
Trustee Rodriguez.
so yeah, my recollection of that previous meeting is similar to yours, that our direction to staff was to focus on to limit talking about potential future projects to those 2 sites, but not to only declare those 2 sites surplus. And as you know, I have concerns about some of the language in the resolution.
So if I can offer a suggestion to the board.
We have another board member who has not spoken.
Oh,
I'm sorry. We have a
I'm sorry.
We have an order here. Vice President Alvarez.
No, I appreciate your concerns, President Lomax. I share those same concerns.
And I've already spoken my piece. So Mr. Saldani, it's back to you.
Thank you. And my suggestion would be, and hearing all of you speak on the topic, and I agree, frankly, we need to confirm that all of the properties that we're dealing with are declared surplus. And today you can handle 2 of those because those have been agendized. I would just suggest that, going forward, maybe at the next meeting, staff could be prepared with a list of the remaining properties that we cannot confirm have already been surplused. And then you can take this similar action with respect to the balance of those properties.
Is it because of the wording of the resolution that not all the properties are agendized? I'm confused.
No, I'll go back to what I was saying earlier. And if I misunderstood the board, that's on me. I did not understand the board to say declare everything surplus and then we'll start working on it. I took that to mean let's focus on those 2 properties. So that's what I directed Rebecca to put on the agenda.
Okay, since it's agendized that way, we have no other choice. We will go ahead and proceed with the presentation, and then we'll have to re-agendize the other properties that were part of the 7-Eleven committee.
Well, the other option I can see, Board President Lomax, is having the discussion today, and we're going to have to come back next time anyway, and then we could address your concerns by listing all the properties that we hear you saying you want declared surplus and addressing any issues that you have on the resolution to make it more accurately reflect the direction you want to go.
And the good thing for timeliness issues is we have a board meeting Tuesday night. There's no reason we can't tidy this all up then.
I would love to hear the concerns from the board as far as the resolution goes, so that we can make sure that we have it appropriately worded for you in Tuesday night's meeting, and we'll ensure that we have all properties included.
Okay, so we'll start with Trustee Danenberg,
No, I have no concerns at this time.
Trustee Callahan.
I think part of the piece on the resolution is just the component of that these are proposed properties and not already assuming that that these are already going to have a next step of being sold. I think because as President Lomax has shared and kind of in review of the 7-Eleven process, there's been a real long process in all of this. And so I personally don't feel comfortable in adopting a resolution that kind of ties all that up into one resolution. I think that we need to go through a process. And so that's just all I have to say for Tuesday's meeting.
So I just want to make sure I'm super clear. So we are going to
I'm only one of 5. I'm only one of 5 though.
I know, but I can see everybody's faces. So if we take out the language, pursue selling the properties, like those types of selling, we want to take those out just so we're focusing back on just the surplus language, right? Okay. And just so the board knows, we could never, ever like take a board resolution like this and just sell a property without you guys being with us, like, and talking extensively through it. But like that will be, you'll be sick of hearing me talk about properties, I promise, but we will make sure those are taken out.
Go ahead. Let's go in order. Trustee Rodriguez.
Yeah, and part of my concern with that language, Dr. Chandler, is that was not the committee's recommendation. So for the language of the resolution to say, accept the committee's recommendation to declare these properties surplus and sell them, that was not the committee's recommendation in some instances. So that is my objection to the language. I'm not necessarily opposed to selling at some point, I just want to make sure that the language we adopt is language that honors the work that was done by the committee and allows that process to unfold.
Vice President Alvarez.
Yeah, and I'm in full agreement with that also. That was my concern too, about us honoring the committee and what they wanted to have happen.
And I'll just chime in that Mr. Saldani's explanation that because you're declaring it surplus does not mean that you even have to act at all. Somehow, I think that when we do a resolution, we're giving all the information to the public, and then we're saying this is what we believe, this is what we're going to do, and we have the option to do this. But I agree with what everyone has said, that the 7-Eleven committee, their job was to determine which property should be surplus, so we could go to that next step. So I think all we're saying is we're not opposed to what you're saying. We just feel that we have to divide it into, let's adopt what the 7-Eleven committee said first, and then go to the next step of, now we want to take this action on these properties. And I believe that, shake your head if you all, that's what we're saying. And we're not saying that what you've done is not good. I mean, we're going in a positive direction. We just want to make sure that we document it correctly for future boards and for future administration to know that what the intent was. So do you, at this point, do we want to not take action and have it rewritten for Tuesday's meeting?
Yes, please. And then I will bring
Is
it
that-
back.
Is that
rewritten.
everybody on the board want to give a thumbs up for that?
And
Okay.
so I can work with the staff to make sure that happens in the way that you would like it to happen. I'm not hearing you say you want a separate resolution for each property, but you want each property that was under study for it to say what is happening with that property.
Now, by the way, if you want to do a resolution based on our previous conversation, because we had said put your focus on 2 properties, but my fear is we're going to, like I said, we're going to be discussing a lease on a property that was part of the study. And we just said we wanted to make sure that we redeclared it surplus so everybody knew we were doing the right thing. Let's just get this all so that we don't have the situation that we have now, that it's questionable whether we did the right thing. Does everybody agree with that? Yeah.
Okay.
And if I can just interject one clarification, and that is, what I'm hearing is you want all of those properties listed in that resolution for declaration of them being surplus, but only those properties that, number 1, have not been previously declared surplus, and number 2, we can't find a written record or other evidence that they've been previously declared surplus. I just want to make sure that the expectation is not that we also include properties that we do know have been previously declared surplus.
Everybody okay with that?
Mhm.
Trustee Callahan, I see a question on your face.
And just to be sure, I don't know, the Fraser Ranch property, we will double check. We'll double check all the properties that are currently being leased that they've been declared surplus to. Yeah.
I think part of this came up just for clarification purposes. When Mr. Saldani said that you're not supposed to discuss property or disposition of property or leasing a property or doing anything on a property until you declare it surplus. So technically we need to go back to the 7-Eleven committee's recommendation. And if they said all 25, I'm being exaggerating, but let's say there were 25 properties that they felt that it was time to be able to discuss disposition of those properties. In order to discuss those dispositions, we have to first declare them surplus. So that's all we're saying, I think, is to make it all legal so that we can discuss the property. Not that we're going to, like Mr. Saldani said in his first sentence was, this doesn't mean you have to, you can do whatever you want, but you can't even discuss it or go forward on it until you declare it surplus. So the recommendation, my understanding was, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, that the 7-Eleven committee looked at the properties and said, yes, these could be declared surplus for future discussion. Right? Roger, you're muted, Roger.
The Fraser Ranch was not included in that. So we're going to need to leave that off. It was not
leave it
part
off.
of the review.
Okay. And Miss Trustee Callahan, you still had a question?
I guess my only question was in clarification from Mr. Saldani is, do we want to go ahead and just include all surplus, verify and confirm the status of all the properties as opposed to just the ones that we're asking for clarification on, and also the ones that are agendized?
Yes.
It's a small, minute detail.
We can do that through my department, and I will discuss that with Mr. Soldati and Mr. Sewage.
So does everyone, Dr. Dannenberg, do you have a question? No?
No questions.
Any other trustee?
So
Rodriguez?
just to clarify, and I apologize if we're beating a dead horse here, but because Washington School has already been declared surplus, that will not be on this resolution. What will be on this resolution are the other properties that the 7-Eleven committee recommended for surplus designation.
I believe that to be the case, and we know for sure that would be the likely the Sudden estate. We'll look at the Jewett estate and try to confirm that, the ESC and the Avenue School. So at the most, we would be listing 4 properties and could potentially just be 3.
Dr. Dannenberg, you're muted.
I think Dr. Rice is correct. We're just looking at what the committee looked at and what the committee recommended.
And then once we declare them surplus, we can have all the discussions we want about them. Okay. So with that, we will not be taking action on this matter. So we will move in. Are we ready to move on then? Yes. Okay. We'll move to 12B, discussion regarding short, long-term lease with Washington School property. Dr. Rice and Dr. Chandler.
I will go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Chandler, and I know that Legal Counsel Ramos has some comments to make by way of background.
So this is also part of the process.
I'm sorry, but is Mr. Soldani still on this part too with us? No, I just wanted to thank him and everyone and for being here for this discussion. And Mr. Sewage, if you need to leave, we more than understand. We just want to thank you for your time and all the hard work you've done, and we appreciate it.
Thank you. So we, as we are talking about the Washington School property now, Mr. Ramos is going to give us a background, a short background of where we are with that property. But we're bringing this up because this is part of our process of making sure that all of our leases are up to market value rates, so that we're ensuring that we're getting all the money we need to get for our own kiddos so that they're going back into the public schools. So Mr. Ramos, did you want to give a brief history
Sure.
of where we are?
Thank you, Dr. Chandler. So what I wanted to do just for the board's information as well as for the public is just to give a little bit of information and background regarding the Washington School and how it became leased at this point in time. So Washington School was declared unsafe for occupancy as a result of an engineering test back in 1983. The engineering test came back that there was an issue with liquefaction, which would result if an earthquake struck. And so the district at the time decided to close that school site and redistribute the students from that school site to other schools. Between 1983 and 1997, the school went into a state of disrepair as a result of just the time and nobody using the school site as a regular school site. There was some problems with break-ins and with people living there who were unauthorized to live there. So in 1997, basically what happened as a result of the school being an attractive nuisance in the community. In 1997, discussions were started to see what purposes that the Washington School could be used for. There was interest by the Ventura County Christian School, a local private school, to lease the facility. So negotiations ensued between 1997 and 1999. A lease agreement was negotiated, and it addressed the two goals of the parties, which was one, a place for the local private school to have school, and also the district school, which was to take one of its sites that it had and refurbish it without the use of district funds. The lease agreement that was negotiated had a rent abatement clause in there that basically said that any funds and or restoration and refurbishment done by the private school would be used to offset any rent that was due. But since, as Dr. Chandler said, that we were given the directive to review all of our leases, we did find that there were some issues with enforcement in some of the terms in this lease. And so we are now addressing those. The lease is now coming to an end. It's been in effect for about a little over 20 years. So we are addressing those issues. One of the issues that we would like to address is the safety of the school site. We've looked through a lot of documentation to determine safety issues at the site, as well as what the fair market value for rent is. So at this time, with that overview, we just wanted to give the board an opportunity to have a discussion and to ask any questions regarding the Washington site.
Okay, we'll start in our order. Dr. Dannenberg.
Yeah, my only concern is at this point in time is the structural safety of the building and to ensure that those students are safe. If we can't house our own students there, we shouldn't be housing other students there. So, you know, the idea of making sure it's safe is very important to me. So thank you for looking into that.
Not a problem. And, you know, we are in discussions with the site for a successor lease, but we're also going to bring up the issue of the safety of that school site.
Thank you, Trustee Callahan. You're muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you, Marianne. Yes, I agree. Thank you so much, Dr. Dannenberg. I think since we've started this process, it was so helpful for us. As we all know, we went on a tour earlier, but to kind of confirm that, I know that we closed it in 1983, but to make for structural components, as you briefed us on, Anthony and Mr. Ramos, it is so important that we make sure that this structure is safe, that we also are communicative with the families of that school of what is going on. I think that's really important, not only for our leasees, but also for us, because these are all Ventura's children and our families and our entire community. So I just want to make sure that they understand what is happening, what the process is, and what information, because so they can make their own decisions as well as parents, and as parents sending students. We know several families that attend that school, and in general, I think all of us here are really concerned about the safety, but that it's also communicated clearly and timely to our families that attend this particular school.
Understood.
And also want to share and share it out with the community, because as we all know, Ventura is very dedicated to its education in our schools, and what's impacting our schools very much is looked at by all community members, even many community members, I should say, with or without kids at that particular school.
Thank you. Trustee Rodriguez.
So first, apologies, my kid was calling me and I had already unmuted. So I don't answer my phone during board meetings, but that doesn't mean my kid doesn't call me. So a couple of things. One, I think it's really important to acknowledge that the school has been a really good neighbor. And one of the things that we've heard over and over again from community members is that they appreciate the fact that the school has done a good job of keeping that building from falling into greater disrepair and has been a nice resource. And so I don't think any of us take that lightly, but I could not agree more with what Dr. Dannenberg said is, our first and most important job is to keep the community's children safe. And until we know that that building is safe for children to learn in, it literally keeps me up at night. So we need to know that it's, good, bad, or otherwise, we need to know what's going on in that school to know whether or not it's safe for anyone's children to be there. And I hope we can do that work quickly and then figure out next steps from there.
Okay, thank you, Vice President Alvarez.
It's always best to be the last two that go because my fellow board members, they just speak from our hearts too. So I agree with all those sentiments 100%.
And I would echo what Vice President Alvarez just said. It's we all agree the safety is the most important, and making sure that the families, all of us, feel safe. That's the bottom line. So thank you for this opportunity to say what we need to say. So no more comments on item 12B. We'll go to 12C, naming a facility. Now this is just a review of the board policy 7310. It has nothing to do with naming facilities. It is not agendized that we are discussing certain schools. So I want to warn everyone during the conversation that it'd be a violation of the Brown Act if we talked about individual schools and the naming of schools. This is being brought to us just to look at our policy on naming schools, and if we need to update that policy because it may or may not be outdated. And so my understanding is that Dr. Chandler is going to discuss with us the policy period.
Correct. Thank you. Can you guys see the current board policy for naming? Excellent. So the board requested that we bring this back up for discussion. And really, I am open to just hearing your input on how you would like this to be changed. I'm not sure that I have exact recommendations aside from there might be a few items in there that slightly contradict each other. So if we want to clarify those, such as like number 2 towards the top, individuals living or deceased who may have contributions of state or nationwide world significance. And then it says no school facility shall be named for a living person. So just like those kinds of things, if you guys want to give me suggestions, I'm happy to fix this up and bring it back to the board with recommended changes.
So I guess we'll start in our normal fashion. Trustee Dannenberg.
Yeah, given everything that's happened in our society over the last several months, I have some strong feelings that that we shouldn't be naming any of our facilities after anybody anymore, because what they did today may be viewed very differently 50 years from now. And people are saying, well, they shouldn't have that recognition. So we're not going to have that many more facilities that we have to worry about names so much, but there are enough other issues that we can use at community areas or other things that we can use that, but we don't think we need to honor any individual anymore in the future. So my preference would be to see to take away anybody being a facility named after. Thank you.
Trustee Callahan.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Dr. Dannenberg. I have a little bit of a different thought on that. I feel that as a former history teacher, I think that, and all of us are here as a governance board, I think it is important to honor and recognize some profound transformational leaders in history that have a legacy. I know that that causes and may be looked at as a way to, that there will definitely be some discourse that will be follow that process. But I think that that's important. And I think that that's a healthy thing in a community. And so, so I actually have like kind of a different opinion, and that is why I do feel that we need to just make sure that there's no contradictions. I too read that and had some clarifying questions. Is it says here that it's living, but then below it says no school facility should be named for a living person. So I just think that any of those clarifications, if we can kind of look at that and make sure that they're consistent. And that is my only other, and my other piece is to have obviously it is the board, right, decision. I read that, I know, right, at the end of the day, but that I do agree with the process and making sure that our community members are sharing their input.
Trustee Rodriguez.
Oh, can I put one more?
Yes, absolutely.
No, you're done.
No. Oops. And now my dog is saying I'm done too.
Oh, now I'm going to put mine.
That we're making sure, I would love to see a lens around diversity, equity, and inclusion. I know that I say that a lot, but if we can also have some sort of standard that in the nomination process, if we don't decide on that route, that we're looking at DEI.
I'm laughing at Trustee Callahan because your dog's made my dog start barking. Okay, now Trustee Rodriguez.
Thank you. So I do agree in large part with Dr. Dannenberg that I think it can be very problematic naming facilities after individuals. But I think what I would want us to stop short of is prohibiting it. I think maybe discouraging it. I mean, you know, there are those exemplary kind of leaders who we may want to do that at some point. And I think I wouldn't want to limit us or a future board from doing it if they felt truly compelled. I have issue with that inconsistency about only limitation number 2 is applicable, because that doesn't seem to make it. Then why is limitation 1 there?
Can I give you a clarifying background on that real quickly? And I don't know where the wording got lost in the many times we've looked at this or updated it. It used to be that you could name rooms or cafeterias or pools or parts of schools after living people if they made a big contribution, but not buildings, not the facility. Like you could not name a school after a living person, but you could name like the Larrabee Stadium or the parish pool or those kind of things, or the gymnasiums were named after people. So, but somewhere the wording has changed over the years. So it's not, you're right, it needs to be clarified because that was the original intent, but now that doesn't say that. So.
Because I think I'm sorry, Anthony, go ahead.
I'm sorry. If I may, I remember when this language was suggested, and what Ms. Lomax has stated is absolutely correct. And so what the language in here indicates is that if you look at the first, it says individuals living or deceased. The governing board may name district schools and or district owned or lease buildings, grounds, or facilities in recognition of individuals living or deceased, and it goes on. But then it goes down to address Ms. Lomax's point. It says the board places the following limitations on names suggested and will not accept any suggested names which violate these limitations. However, in naming individual buildings, so it goes to your point, Ms. Lomax, rather than an entire school site, it was the pool, it was the gym, it was the, you know, whatever it may be. Only limitation number 2 would be applicable. So what that means is that if you wanted to name a building or a room or a quad or after a living person, you could. So I just wanted to make that clear. But can the language be more clear? Yes, if you're having discussions and questions about it, yes. But it was trying to address Ms. Lomax's point when this discussion came to us in prior years.
So I guess I would want to have that clarification on there, right? Because I had always heard, it's interesting, like I had always heard that you couldn't name a garden after someone who was alive. They had to, you know, be deceased. And clearly that isn't what our policy says. So I think we should at least clean that up. And I do like the idea that Dr. Dannenberg floated of, in my opinion, at least discouraging naming schools for individuals. That's it.
Vice President Alvarez.
Yeah, and I agree with that too, that we would hopefully look to name a school other than an individual or facility, and look for more of a community, but not to a prohibited overall, just like Trustee Rodriguez said. And to have obviously something that speaks into the wording or verbiage that as stated in recognitions and memorials, because that really brings out, upon request, the board shall consider planting commemorative trees, erecting monuments, or dedicating buildings, parts of buildings, athletic fields, gardens, and yada, yada. But that's right there kind of where it states that we have the ability to have someone living or deceased that can be memorialized or recognition in that way. So just having that somewhere in the verbiage where it says no living unless noted in recognitions and memorials. And then the only other thing is I would say no, I would add the word future. No future school facility would be named for a living person, and that we would look at obviously the committee's recommendations for future sites or facilities on a one-on-one basis, as we've discussed prior.
Okay, I agree. What I would suggest, there's a lot of things in here that are good, and then there's things that need to be further better wording. I can't even think of the right word now, but I think that what we should do is appoint an ad hoc committee, because usually when a policy is changed by the board, 2 board members get together and try to word it and work with the district office, work with Dr. Chandler or Dr. Rice for doing so, and then bringing it back for us for approval. And we need to do this because there has been some questions about some of the names of facilities within our school district, but I believe we should take care of this housekeeping before we go on to the next step. So if you all agree with that, who wants to volunteer?
Velma, Board President Lomax, I'm
Yes.
sorry, if I might suggest, we do have a rotation of board members to review. If you'd like, I could dig up who's on rotation, or we could ask Amy who's on rotation to review board policies.
I
And
think
just
it was
have them.
Jerry and I last, so I don't know who's next.
We could
Or if
find
it
that
falls
out.
under ours, you just let us know. But yeah, why don't you do that in a Friday board letter? Because if we do it on a rotation, but does everyone agree that that would be the right way to do this? Thumbs up, board? Okay. There
Okay,
you go.
thank you.
You have a consensus. Okay, item 12D. Consideration of to refurbish Ventura High School Larrabee Stadium snack bar area. Once again, I guess Bill Altenbaumer and Dr. Chandler.
Thank you. Bill is actually out of the state, but I know we have Terry Allison here to help answer questions if we need it. I'm going to share this presentation. This was requested from the board that we look at 2 things with the Ventura High School Stadium. The first is the ingress in the home side of the stands, where we have a little bit of a bottleneck, there's a few competing factors. We can get into that a little bit more. So the egress, we had looked at this in our master planning in a few different ways. One, we're concerned, like if there was an issue, the path to get out of the home stands, as all of you know who have been to any big event, they're kind of bottlenecks. And for us to open up that path and widen it so that it was easier, we had multiple ways for people to get out of the stadium. The current estimation that we have on that is about $800,000. And this also triggers this overall review of the stadium. So then it makes us look with the DSA and make sure that we're up to current standards for the stadium when we start to do these kinds of things. So that would be kind of a starting price for us, knowing also that that's built right on a fault line. So it becomes really tricky with the structural engineers and how we work in that stadium area. Secondly, are there any questions first about the ingress egress? I'm going to move on to the snack bar.
Do you,
Secondly.
let's ask for questions on this part first. Dr. Dannenberg?
I guess the question about ingress, egress, are we talking about just getting out of the stadium itself? Or are we talking about once you get to the parking lot, how you get out of there?
We're talking about just getting out of the home side of the stadium.
You mean the people walking out of it?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because I guess that's just not as much of a concern to me as the parking lot and how people get out of that parking lot given the traffic flows and stuff.
That is also a tricky area that we could explore as well. But right now we were asked to just explore that particular section.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Trustee Callahan?
Sorry about that. It says in here, but it's including but not limited to seating and handrails. And so having parents who have come in and out of that area, I was actually pretty surprised about our limited access for handicapped and accessibility. And so I'm just kind of wondering, does this price, because we'll widen, it doesn't include any of that, correct?
So it starts once we start opening this up again, then we go back to DSA and they will let us know, like, these are the things that we need to add for ADA accessibility. And Terry, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this price was just the starting of that, and we know it would go up from there. And I'm pretty sure this price was also assessed a little bit, I want to say a little bit before COVID, if I'm correct. And so I'm sure it would be well over $1 million to start right now. Terry, do you have anything?
Yeah,
to
you're
add on?
correct in that, Rebecca. So this during the master plan, this was the cost, and this was really for the very narrow steep ramp area that exits from the west side of the home stadium, kind of down towards the ticket booth area. It's circled in yellow there. And there are two paths. One path kind of goes a little up the hill and then meanders down around. And then there's a path, closer to the track area that kind of goes straight down. And neither one of those pathways are ADA accessible at this time. So right now, the only true ADA accessibility for seating on the home side is at the very top of the stadium. And we do have provisions for that, but again, it's only at the very top. And I think our goal would be to create that ADA access at the that lower section there with an ADA ramp, and also increasing the width and the capacity of exiting in that area. And now that area is a very steep hill, so it would require a lot of structural retaining. At one point, there used to be a bathroom building up there. That has since been removed, but the pathway kind of leads up and around to that old area. So it's quite, it's quite the structural project to widen that. We don't have any space in the track itself to widen the exit. And we would certainly look at the fencing and keeping the public off the track area as necessary, because I know sometimes the crowd control there is also an issue. We would look at all of that if and when we embark upon that project. So, and Rebecca, you referred to when we take this for permit to the state architect, they will start to look at the egress or the ADA requirements throughout that side of the stadium itself. So it may open it up to handrails, which we currently don't have appropriate handrails, the stair spacing, also the ADA seating at the lower part of the home side stadium, access to bathrooms, and whatnot. So it opens it up a little bit. We do have fault lines that run through that hill. And when we were building the new field house, which is actually on the visitor side, we did some fault line studies. And so we have an idea of what we're given over there. There's not a lot of room to build another building out the stadium. There may be some possibility up at the very top in that upper parking lot area. We haven't done a very extensive fault line study up there, but and if we did, it would be in the neighborhood of $100,000 for the fault line study, which is a very expensive venture. So anyway, I don't believe we would have to do a fault line study for the egress, because that's not actually an occupied building space. It's only for exiting. And so I think that we would be clear on that.
Thank you, Terry.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that explanation. And I'm just, for my easy reference, I apologize. I have here the Ventura Unified Long Range Facilities Master Plan from 2020-2023, or 2020 to 2030. Can you just help reference for me where because it mentions here on the slide about the master plan, and maybe you guys can just answer it. So is it referenced in here in this long range plan that was?
We can email it to you, Amy.
Okay,
I believe it is in the long
2020.
range. Yeah,
It is.
believe it is in
Yes.
the long range master
Yes.
facility plan, but we can email you the
Okay.
page number.
Yeah.
Thank
It's in the high school section. And
Okay.
the high school section is broken out by different areas. And under the stadium, there are a number of items in there, including the snack bar as well.
Okay, wonderful. I appreciate that. I didn't see it, but that I appreciate you sharing the easy reference. And then also, if you can point out on pages 42 to 43, I did not see it on the summary matrix that it was under a priority 1 and priority 2. But again, just clarification for me.
Yes, we will go back through and look at that. We can send that out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe I just need my glasses since they're such small dots.
Could I ask you to make this picture bigger, Rebecca, by getting rid of the sides part? There you go. Thank you. There you go. Thank you very much. So was that it, Trustee Callahan? Then we're going to move to Trustee Rodriguez.
Thank you. I was wondering, Miss Allison, could you share with us where the second egress would be proposed?
Right now, we haven't done any formal studies on a second egress other than just making that side, that west side, give it the capability to handle more traffic. It would, you know, conceivably go through the whole hillside. We have looked and walked the opposite side, which goes towards Hall Canyon. And along with that, there's a very limited space for exiting. And if we did so, we would have to exit onto a sidewalk. And so that would become a joint city Ventura Unified project, trying to determine and engineer how that would actually play out, because we theoretically shouldn't be exiting folks out into the street from that level. We do have a lot, you know, the other majority of the exiting is up at the top. But I believe that, you know, more, we would have to do a lot more research on exiting off to Hall Canyon side.
Okay, thank you. I mean, and I know this is a concern that's shared by our facilities staff and anybody who ever goes to a large event at Ventura High School, but if there were an emergency, getting out of that stadium safely is a hazard at best, right? Exiting along that lower rail, even after a football game or after graduations, takes ages. And if there were truly something where people needed to urgently exit, there is not the ability to do that safely. And then add to that the layer of providing an equitable experience for those members of our community who have disabilities. And, you know, I mean, yes, we do provide a place for wheelchair accessible viewing from the top by the snack bar. But if your kid's graduating from high school, is it really equitable to be, you know, the furthest location that is, you know, within like everybody else would be closer than you, basically, right? I think that's just kind of an issue. I understand it's a very steep price tag and that there are lots of other concerns around how to do it in a way that makes sense. But I just think we have a beautiful, fully functioning stadium at Boynton High School, which is safe for people to use. And I would like to see that also at Ventura High School.
Thank you. Vice President Alvarez.
Yeah, I don't have much to add, just that it's safety is the top priority. So I think that being a huge concern on people leaving that stadium. I remember when that bathroom was up there and how they open up the space now. It just has seemed, yeah, the parking and even the exiting is such a big issue. So I'd like to see us have some plan into that as soon as possible.
I agree with everything everyone has said. I just was curious if I know that when you exit the parking lot that is the upper parking lot, not the one by the snack bar, but the one on the west side, that there is a gate at the end that goes out into, I think it's El Jardín. I'm not sure the name of the street, or maybe is, I think it is. Would it be possible to make that a one-way where you come up and you park? Because my biggest worry, I've always worried about this, somebody's going to come out of this parking lot and hit a person that's walking down, because everyone that exits from the home side exits, not everyone, but the majority of people that exit through that side and walk down that place where cars are coming. And I know that the residents might not like it, but they kind of knew the stadium was there when they bought their houses, and they know there's a gate there. I want us to look at, when we're doing this, the best way to make it safe for everyone, because it's only a matter of time before something happens to someone when they're leaving. And like Trustee Rodriguez said, if it were an emergency, people wouldn't be going slowly. They wouldn't be being careful. But if you kind of made it one way in and one way out, it might help. Just a suggestion, you don't have to do it. And also, count the amount. I think that you said, Miss Allison, that this will come from the DSA, but I don't believe that we have the proper amount of handicap spaces for the the capacity. because especially up behind the snack bar, I know there's not, and there's very few in the west side. So I'm hoping that we do give that a priority. And the other thing is that during a game up in the parking lot by the snack bar, people park in the middle of the marked parking spots, and they make a whole other row there. Might we consider relooking at how we have those parking spots already marked, and maybe there's a more efficient way to mark it, so we could add that extra row but make it legal so people aren't doing it illegally and possibly unsafely. So that would just be a thing that I would like to have us look at, because I do think it's obvious if you go to a game or a graduation or anything, there's enough room to, because people do it anyway. I'm not sure there's enough room to get a fire truck around it, but we do need to look at has it been marked properly enough so that we have the maximum amount of legal parking spots. But otherwise, that's all I have to say. And oh, I'm sorry, one more thing. Sorry, Miss Callahan, I'm gonna be adding another thing. The railings. If you've ever had to have a cast on your leg like I did once and try to walk out from up above, the railings are really, really important because they're not there and people need help getting in and out. So that's it for me. Anybody have any additional comments on this section?
I do. So I did found the page. Thank you so much. It's on page 403 on the master plan, and it's long range facility master plan recommendations for Ventura High School. And it's divided up. And again, I wasn't here when this was all adopted, and I read through the process for everything. And it looks like it was adopted. You guys already know this briefing, but April 28th of 2020. And in there, it mentions athletics and activities, but under priority 1, 0 to 9 years. I'm assuming we are in priority 1, and that quite possibly there may even be an asterisk next to that because of COVID. So if this was adopted on April 28th of 2020, we have our COVID year. Are we like, how do we know? And then, sorry, the snack bar. I'm trying to understand the process. The new snack bar at Stadium, which was rated and recommended at 1.4 million, 460,250, and then to create an outdoor learning / gathering area at $527,313.
Trustee Callahan, could I interrupt you just for a moment?
Please.
Since she only went over the egress part first, let's have them give the second part and then ask those questions, because they may be answered. I'm not sure, but.
Okay, so it, for the egress, then would that be under the create outdoor learning and gathering areas?
No.
And also to clarify one thing, also Trustee Callahan, that was part of the master's facility plan that we were hoping to go out for a bond on. So all that entire project of 10 years was us hopefully getting the bond passed and us having $990 million of facility repairs that we were hopefully going to get at least 300, and I think it was 35 million if the bond passed. So that's kind of like you said, it's almost, we're not even in year 1 on that. We can't start that until we decide if we're going after a bond in the future.
I appreciate that background. So I guess I'm just trying to understand a little bit, and I will wait till the end. I do promise. Where does this come into the process as we're making these decisions? And
thank you.
Thank you.
So yeah, the process in the district with creating the master facility plan is to kind of look at our need and then to prioritize needs and then use that information so that when we go for a bond, we can tell our community, these are our priorities, this is how we're ranking them. But so this is the existing snack bar at Larrabee Stadium. It is 365 square feet. Not a great picture of the stands. It's tiny, 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 as I have heard from President Lomax. It is, people are on top of each other in there. I think we've had a few conversations. I know facilities has about wanting to do some improvements, even if we can't do the whole huge improvement that we would love to do. So the master plan includes a new snack bar at 1.4 million. Obviously, that is dependent upon getting a bond. But the proposed upgrades that we may be able to do to try to improve the current snack bar, we have listed here. So just smaller renovations that might help make it a more functional space, which would still cost an estimated $250,000-ish, but a much lower price tag than the 1.4 million. This is the current snack bar. I was asked to add in Buena's concession stand by President Lomax. This is Buena's snack bar in comparison to Ventura's, which Buena's, as we know too, was partially built by fundraising. So they have 1,400 square feet, and it is a full kitchen, and they have the space for food preparation, as well as the space for the cashiers to hand out and ring people up. So you can see there's quite the contrast between the two snack bars, and we would love to get them somewhat a little closer together than how far apart they are right now. But I am open for questions or suggestions.
Okay, we'll start with Trustee Dannenberg. And
Yeah.
could I ask you to take the picture away because I can't see if somebody's raising their hand? Thank you. Trustee Dannenberg.
Yeah, the questions I would have would do around finances. How are we going to finance this, these projects? And if we have money in the building fund to do this, how much money do we have in the building fund? And what other needs may we have that may be more of a priority?
I see Anna Campbell on. Anna could probably give us an exact amount of what we have in the building fund. We have a lot of priorities, and as the board knows from our master facility plan, we have almost $1 billion worth of need. So there's a tremendous amount of need. It just is a matter of the board telling us that they would like us to prioritize this need. But Ms. Campbell, do you know approximately the balance in the building fund?
I'm sorry, give me just a minute and I'll have that for you shortly. Sorry.
Yeah, she's going to pull that up for you. We will go back to that if anybody else. I think it's.
Dr. Dannenberg, did you have other comments while she's getting that information?
No, not at this time.
Okay, then we will move on to Trustee Callahan and come back. And when you get that information, Ms. Campbell, just give me a high sign.
Thank you. And so I'm going to go back to this question. We have and thank you so much, Dr. Dannenberg. So is the need list the same as what was put into this process for the long term? And for those of you who can't see, the long-term master facility plan.
The master facility plan is like.
Are they the same?
They're the same. They're the overarching, what does every single site need or could use to be a better site or to update to current standards.
And there's just some great pieces, and the guiding principles and the whole thing about outdoor and indoor spaces. So I guess I'm going to ask another question, and please, I just hope everyone takes this with a grain of salt. It's not, I'm just trying to understand, is that how did this priority get put onto this? Like, how, I know that we had been talking about it, but to be honest, I hadn't gone in because we've been so busy and inundated. I didn't fully study it until this meeting for the facility special board meeting. It's kind of when I dug up these pieces. Obviously, we don't have a bond. Thank you so much, Dr. Dannenberg, for asking how much is in our capital building funds currently to date. But how did this topic, from what I'm reading here, get bumped from priority 2, 10 to 15 years, to quite possibly, you know, zero in the priority 1, 0 to 9 years.
I believe it was put on the future board agenda items and requested by the board, and there was consensus to bring it to the board meeting.
So can we, so as a board member, I can kind of go through this and highlight, as long as there's consensus, and I know sometimes I need to work on that. So I can highlight any topic area that I think is a priority, put it onto future board meeting, and then we can kind of vote on kind of getting it approved, and quite possibly, obviously, since we don't have the bond, get it paid for or approve it to be paid for to move forward with this additional money that Dr. Dannenberg asked for the balance on.
Can I clarify one thing?
You bet.
What
Absolutely.
brings things up to the top is primarily safety issues. And we all agreed that the egress and ingress of the stadium is a huge safety issue. And I had mentioned that the snack bar was a safety issue, which when it gets to my turn to talk, I'll explain why. So that it wasn't a matter that one board member wanted something to come to the top and it was their priority. It was a matter that what we were discussing became a safety issue. And when we made that a few years back, we made that master plan. It was kind of like every school site, Amy, was allowed to give their, if we had $1 million gazillion, what would you want? And then
Or a billion.
Or
Okay.
a gazillion billion, whatever. If you had if you had no limit, what would you want? And then we ask each site to tell us, based on what you want, how would you prioritize those your wants? And then which were really needs and which were really wants. And so that's how that all came about. And as we look at that, if you go back and start studying it, probably at every site, you will find things that at some point is going to have to be moved up to the top, whether we put it in the 9 to 15 years or we put it in the 0 to 1 year, based on new information. So that's where we are. It's not, sure, you could go through and say what you want, but any one of us could, not just you. I'm not pointing a finger at you. Any one of us could.
No,
but the way the process went was each site set their priorities. And by the way, I didn't agree with all the priorities, but I'm not on every site. So you have to trust the site. And now you might have new administration at a site that their priorities would be different than when we set that. So I think for the district, what always comes up to the top first is safety. So does that help a little bit?
It does, because I'm looking the HVACs for the cafeteria and all of that, and obviously new circumstance, you know, this was adopted again in April. This was like right at COVID. So I guess, before I kind of make a decision on some of this stuff, can I get information on what's already been done because of COVID? I mean, there's things on like outdoor and indoor seating that's a safety issue, right? Possibly moving forward for next year and us having different options. Is that going to be moved up? And I'm just looking at Ventura High School as an example, but it is part of the guiding principles. Is that a topic that gets moved up to priority 1? And I know we're talking about the stadium right now. So I'm kind of just trying to understand I don't know if I have enough information at this time in the process of being able to, so I'm just going to stop.
Okay,
but
well,
being able to share.
Actually, can I just, I'll just jump in. Sorry, President Lomax, because I was on the facilities long range master plan committee along with Dr. Dannenberg, and so part of the push and pull that you're seeing, Ms. Callahan, is that obviously we all want to do the things that impact student learning, right? Those are the things that every time you get a group of people together who care about education, there's a strong focus to, well, how is this going to impact student learning? And so you see things like internet upgrades and improved outdoor learning spaces, because those are things that we know impact learning. There's the far less sexy side of things is what Velma is talking about, which is the stuff that no one really wants to pay for, but we sometimes have to pay for because it impacts safety. And this is one of those issues where I think the committee was like, yeah, I mean, egress, that'd be nice, right? But like, you know, the stadium, we don't go there every day. It's not like critical. But the truth is that when you look at it from a risk standpoint for us as a district with somebody being injured, then it sort of moves up to the top, right? So that's the push and pull that you're seeing when you look at that and think, well, okay, but there's all these other things that are before it on the list. When you get a group of community members together, it was parents, staff members, both classified and teaching staff, site leadership. We had members of our chambers of commerce there. I mean, so it was really a broad swath of our community who participated in the conversation, and some of them may have had priorities that were not, strictly speaking, the safety or risk of our sites. Does that make sense? So that's, I think, what you're picking up as you look at that. And sorry, I jumped in just because, having walked through that process, I thought
you were on the committee. That makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think, but I'm going to interrupt you because I think Ms. Campbell has the information for us.
Okay, great.
I do. With our current projects that we're working on right now, we have $8.5 million available.
And Anna, is that with the $3 million set aside for the West Side pool?
That's with the 3 million removed. So the 3 million is not included in that.
Appreciate that.
Dr. Dannenberg, since she answered your question, did you have any other comments?
Yes. You say on the projects we're working on, does that exclude money for Atlas's K-8 program that we've already decided we're moving forward on? Is that money pulled out so we're taking care of their needs?
The money that's pulled out, that I'm pulling out, are projects that are booked and active right now. So you have pool repairs happening. You have, like, those items are active, so they've encumbered those funds. So we have 8.5 million to do everything. So whatever was a priority, whether it's Atlas or it's the Ingress Egress or it's whatever that is, that's the balance, which is why I think the bond is the discussion that keeps coming up.
Well, I agree that we have to have a discussion on the bond, but my question is, or at least what I'm hearing you say is, no, we haven't taken care of Atlas at this point in time.
Can I interrupt you? The Atlas, we have decided that we are not adding a building. We have this space, correct me if I'm wrong, Terry, that we're restructuring some of the classrooms to be able to add in the K-8. So the cost for Atlas, I don't anticipate being more than a couple $100,000. So it's not excessive.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're back to Ms. Callahan for the balance of your questions.
I have no other questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Rodriguez.
Thank you. I was going to ask Ms. Allison, with the $250,000 of like sort of potential improvements, how would that, would those be improvements that would still be a good investment when we did the new, or would that money be like demolished and then, you know what I mean? Like, so if we spent the 250,000 now, and then 5 years from now, we get the bond and we build a new snack thing, would that have been a good investment, I guess, is my question. You're muted.
You're muted, Terry.
Thank you. There are probably just minor things that probably could be reused, but honestly, probably not. If we were to build a concession building up at Ventura High School there, probably would not be able to be reused, because these are roofing, windows, flooring, possibly some stainless steel counters could be reused, but probably won't be put back in the same configuration. So I would say on the safe bet, no. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, so I having volunteered in there, nowhere near the number of hours that Ms. Lomax has. I mean, I recognize it's not nearly as nice a facility as Buena's, and it is crowded and poorly designed from a workflow standpoint. I guess I would be personally interested in the things that we could do that would impact, like the food handling aspects, like the sinks and the countertops, which would make it more hygienic. I think even doing the floors, because that is an issue with just being able to clean those floors. It's hard to justify some of the other improvements, even though I think it would make the place feel nice if the goal is ultimately to tear the building down and build something that's more comparable to what we have at Boyna. That's just my opinion.
We have definitely addressed in the last year to year and a half, or actually maybe even 2 years now. I forget that we have COVID in there, so there wasn't very much use for a while. But we've completely repainted inside and out. We replaced all the electrical. We've added 3 compartments, sink, and a new ice maker. But really, honestly, there's not a lot of room to move in that space. It's a long galley type kitchen, and so we're fairly confined, and there's not much we can do that. But yes, we do agree, flooring, a hard lid ceiling, which is drywall paint, all of that would, make it feel cleaner. Certainly wouldn't address that larger picture though.
Terry, if I could jump in real quick, I wanted to ask, and I know we've talked about this before, but to board member Rodriguez's point about the worth of an investment, are there not other options that could serve to better facilitate food handling and snack storage for a period of 2 to 3 to 5 years, like tearing it down and putting in a relocatable with ramps and windows configured for that exact purpose, and then when we go to build the real one, maybe that relocatable can be moved somewhere else, so we're not losing our investment. Is there not something we can do along those lines potentially?
Yeah, there is. That's definitely a possibility. It still does come with a price tag. And when we think back to if we build something in that area, because it is a high seismic zone, we do have to perform a geological hazard study, which includes that trench study. And the reason we do that is because of the hillside just riddled with fault lines. We're not allowed to build within 50 feet of a fault line, or have a building that is within 50 feet of a fault line. We do have some exemptions from that. For example, any non-student building that is an accessory building that is under 250 square feet, we would not have to permit, like a ticket booth or the announcer's station, something like that up there at the stadium would fall into that category. But I know we want it much. I mean, right now our concession building is 360 square feet. We need a lot more than that. So even bringing a portable in we still have that extra tack on of the seismic study that we have to do. And I would be fairly confident that yes, we would be able to put a larger building there, a portable building, or something really cool, a container type building that we could move someplace else and and get some other use out of it. But there's a bit of a price tag up front.
Okay, I just wanted to have you answer that so that the board had a chance to hear a different option.
Yeah.
And Dr. Dannenberg.
Dr. Dannenberg, give your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Given the price tag for this whole project, and given the whole master plan, are there other projects that the administration would see as being more important than this?
I'm not sure we can discuss that at this time, Dr. Dannenberg, because it was agendized as Ventura High School, Larrabee Stadium, and snack bar area. So we'll have to bring that back at another school board meeting to discuss, and that should be brought back soon to start discussing.
Right. I just think as part of this discussion, though, we have to have that discussion. Before we dedicate money to this, are there bigger needs? Is my point.
No, I think that your point is well taken, and I think that we should bring that back at another time to fully discuss. But I just don't want to start discussing specific other items since it was not agendized. Vice President.
Can I ask a quick clarifying question? On the agendized title, it says the snack bar, but then in the description, it talks about the egress and the other piece that we talked about earlier. Can you guys help clarify for that? Is this, and I saw where the entrance is, but then I also know where the snack bar is. Are these together, like, is this a together project, or is this actually, don't help me understand that piece of
Are
it?
you asking if we would only do one or if we have to do them both? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, because the way it's agendized, does that make sense, Velma? Like it says a snack bar, but then there's two different pieces. So I should have just read more clearly in the description. And then
So
when
I did ask this once before on another item, and what Anthony had, Mr. Ramos has explained was the description, the title is a title, but the description tells you what you're going to be discussing. So we are discussing this plan for Larrabee Stadium Snack Bar and the ingress egress challenges. So it's two different challenges. Yeah. So as long as the descriptor part explains what we're discussing, the way that they put the title doesn't affect what we're discussing as long as it's in the descriptor.
Thank you.
Vice President Alvarez.
Thank you. You know, my son just got home and tried to photobomb the
He's adorable.
I would just be on the side of caution just to make sure that, you know, it's a safety issue. That's number one safety issue that we need to take care of. And I guess that ranks in our priority of what our safety issues are right now. I know we have a huge safety issue at Mound right now that we're taking care of, and that was something we weren't looking forward to at the start of the school year. So just seeing where other safety issues fall in line to this one being at a priority level is the only concern I would have.
Well, the good thing is this isn't up for a vote tonight. It was just strictly up for, or this afternoon, it was strictly up for discussion. So we don't have to make those decisions at this time. As you know, I'm the one that has been harping for years about the snack bar at Ventura, at the Ventura Stadium, because my reasoning for that is the entire community of Ventura used that stadium for years and years and years and years. And then they all went and did fundraising. Buena did fundraising, St. Bonnie did fundraising, the college did fundraising, and they'll have state-of-the-art everything. And they forgot about the place that they used for all these years and left it in the state that it was. And now it's up to us as a district to, unfortunately, make sure that it's safe and that it's the way it should be. At 365 square foot, if I just challenge each one of you when football season opens, please go work one time and make sure you wear tennis shoes with a really, really good grip on your shoes so you don't fall on the slippery floor after they're taking sodas out of the things. But I'm going to tell you what, I'm not going to ask that we, although this is probably a hill I might die on before I leave the board, I do not want to ask us to put good money after bad. I don't want any Band-Aids. I don't think it's right to spend money on something that's going to be torn down, but I do want us to think about the safety of the people. If we did nothing more right now but put some kind of epoxy flooring that if it got wet, people would not fall, I would be happy because that's a safety issue. But I do have one question for Miss Allison. Why do we have to redo the fault line when I remember, because my classroom at Ventura High School was like right in the middle of a fault line. And I remember really studying that study we did, really looking at it because it affected me and my students. Why do we have to redo it? Is it no longer valid or do fault lines change?
Some of the fault lines don't change typically, but we do discover new ones, and we haven't done a fault study that covers the upper stadium area yet. The fault line study we did was through the baseball field spot, and so yes, unfortunately it doesn't. Yeah,
that's what I just didn't understand that, because for some reason I thought we did the whole overall. I didn't realize that. But again, like I said, it's something that needs to be done. I think that, in my personal opinion, when this does ever come up for a vote, I think that the traffic is a much bigger safety issue, as long as we kind of maybe put something on the floor, even if it's rubber matting, rubber pads that people won't fall on. Then for now, I do not want to put $260,000 into something that's going to be demolished. And and really what are you doing? You're putting a paint, you're making it pretty. But it still is so inefficient. And I just want to ask you not ever to call it a kitchen, because you're cooking on barbecues, putting them in, it's not a kitchen. It's a place where we put things to sell after they've been prepared. So, but I'd still, regardless, want each of you during the season to go and just look at it so you can see why it's such a pet peeve of mine. I worked in that snack bar for 26 years. And by the way, Jerry Dannenberg and his wife Melinda used to run that snack bar, so he can tell you exactly what I'm talking about.
Hey, I'm already scheduled for this year, and I don't know, but I mean, trustees Alvarez and Callahan have students at that school, so hopefully they're going to be registered to volunteer there.
You know what?
too.
I got summoned to do the scoreboard during a very important game, and I didn't see that coming. So I think that counts for some points.
But I
I'll
do-
visit you at the window for some chili cheese nachos, that's for sure.
There you go. Well, I do appreciate this coming up, and we finally get an opportunity to discuss it publicly, because that's the thing that the public needs to understand. We can't have these conversations unless it's legally and properly agendized. So we appreciate this time. It is 4:29, and I promised we would be done by 5, as other people have other meetings. That is the last item. Does Dr. Rice, or does anyone want to add to that?
Just appreciate the guidance and direction of the board. I think all the conversations that we've had today are going to help us move the district forward on all these items. And I just so much appreciate the clarity and direction. So we'll get to work on it.
Do we have a need to go back into closed session?
We do not.
We do not. Okay, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
I need a second. Did you do that, Ms. Callahan? Okay.
Thank you. Vote as follows. Trustee Dannenberg,
Yes.
trustee Callahan,
Yes.
trustee Rodriguez,
Yes.
trustee Alvarez,
Yes.
and trustee Lomax.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0.
And thank you, everyone. We appreciate your participation, and we will see you on Tuesday at our regularly scheduled board meeting.